The sirens were deafening, but Sheriff Daniel Cole couldn't hear a thing. All he saw was his daughter, Lily, lying on the asphalt, her tiny hand clutching her chest where the bullet had entered. Lily was just 16, a heart patient who needed calm and care, not chaos and violence. Moments earlier, a petty traffic argument had spiraled out of control, and the person holding the smoking gun? Karen Mills, the same HOA president who had made their lives miserable for years. The same woman who had fined Lily for painting her birdhouse pink. Daniel's hands trembled as he knelt beside his daughter, his badge glinting under the streetlight. The town didn't know yet. The woman who had destroyed his world had no idea who she had just crossed. But they would. And when they did, this quiet suburban neighborhood would never be the same again. The hospital waiting room felt like a prison. Every tick of the clock stabbed at Daniel's patience. Doctors were fighting to keep Lily stable. Her fragile heart couldn't handle the trauma of the bullet wound. Outside, reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing like vultures circling prey. Karen, oblivious to the storm she'd unleashed, was already spinning her story. She claimed self-defense, insisting Lily had been reckless in traffic. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, afraid to take sides. After all, Karen wasn't just the HOA president. She had influence, money, and a talent for twisting the truth. But what Karen didn't know was that Daniel wasn't just a grieving father. He was the county sheriff, and as a sheriff, he had access to every piece of evidence, every witness, and every law that could bring her down. For now, he stayed quiet, letting her dig her own grave. But deep inside, the father in him burned with a fire that could not be contained. By morning, the town was divided. Karen held a press conference on her pristine lawn, crocodile tears streaming as she claimed she was terrified and acted in fear for her life. Some neighbors nodded along, too afraid to question her version. But Daniel sat silently in his office, replaying every second of the traffic footage that his deputies had recovered overnight. The truth was undeniable. Karen had lost her temper. Lily hadn't threatened her. She had simply honked when Karen cut her off. The dashcam showed everything, the shouting, the finger-pointing, and finally, Karen pulling the trigger in a fit of rage. Daniel's jaw tightened as he leaned back in his chair. This wasn't just about the law anymore. This was about his daughter, fighting for her life. Karen thought she could bully and bluff her way out like always. But this time, she'd picked the wrong opponent. The quiet sheriff was gone. In his place stood a father ready to fight for justice, no matter the cost. The next evening, the neighborhood gathered for the usual HOA meeting. Karen walked in, confident and smug, dressed in her signature red blazer, holding her clipboard like a queen holding her scepter. She didn't notice the unmarked patrol cars quietly parking around the block. Then, the doors opened, and Daniel stepped inside. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent light, but his face was cold, unreadable. Gasps echoed around the room as two deputies flanked Karen. "Karen Mills," Daniel said, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. "You're under arrest for the attempted murder of a minor." The room froze. Karen's confident smile cracked as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. The same neighbors who once feared her now whispered in disbelief. As she was led past him, Karen sneered, "You think you can ruin me? You'll regret this." Daniel didn't flinch. "No, Karen," he said softly. "You regret this. My daughter's fighting for her life because of you, and now you'll fight for yours. In court." The arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. For years, Karen had ruled the HOA like a tyrant, fining parents for sidewalk chalk, banning backyard gardens, and even dictating the color of people's curtains. But now, the same people who feared her were finally speaking out. Videos flooded social media. Karen screaming at neighbors, threatening fines, even bragging about how untouchable she was. The town, once silent, was now roaring with anger. Meanwhile, Daniel stayed by Lily's side at the hospital. Machines beeped steadily, keeping rhythm with his silent prayers. Every time she squeezed his hand, even faintly, it renewed his determination. This wasn't just about punishment anymore. It was about showing his daughter and the entire town that justice could win, even against someone who thought they were above the law. In her jail cell, Karen paced, still convinced she could manipulate her way out, but she had no idea that her empire of control was crumbling, piece by piece, truth by truth. The courthouse was packed on the first day of the trial. Cameras lined the steps, reporters jostling for space, their microphones buzzing with speculation. Inside, Daniel sat quietly beside the prosecutor, his uniform crisp but his eyes heavy with sleepless nights spent by Lily's bedside. Karen entered in a tailored suit, her usual arrogance masked by a forced smile. She whispered to her lawyer, confident that her wealth and influence would bend the system in her favor. But when the prosecution played the dashcam footage, the room fell silent. There it was. Her anger, her shouting, her hand gripping the gun, and the moment she pulled the trigger. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Karen's face went pale, her bravado faltering for the first time. Daniel didn't flinch. He watched quietly, every muscle tense, as the truth played out for the jury. This wasn't just about a case anymore. It was about every person Karen had ever bullied, every rule she'd twisted for her gain. And this time, the law was finally catching up. Weeks later, the verdict rang through the courtroom, guilty on all charges. Karen's scream of disbelief echoed against the walls, but no one looked her way. For the first time, the queen of the HOA was powerless, led away in chains as the cameras flashed. Outside, neighbors gathered around Daniel, offering quiet thanks and tearful hugs. They weren't just celebrating justice for Lily, they were celebrating freedom from years of fear and control. Back at the hospital, Daniel sat beside his daughter's bed. Lily's small smile, though weak, was brighter than the sun. "Did we win, Dad?" she whispered. Daniel's throat tightened as he brushed a tear from her cheek. "We did, sweetheart. We did." As he held her hand, Daniel realized something. Deeper, justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about hope, healing, and the strength to stand up when no one else could. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, he felt the weight on his chest finally lift.